Okay. This is Noah Peters with the Persson Family History Podcast with Uncle Phil. Good morning, Uncle Phil.
Good morning.
Um, so there's a quote that I like. It says, "I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve." That's a quote from the movie The Lord of the Rings. He's talking about family, and the first part is really what's interesting because a lot of times we spend a lot of time with family, but we don't know everything about them. So with that, we have Uncle Phil here to talk about kind of his past and what he's done, and to learn more about his early days and how he got to where he's at. So the first question I have is about Grandma and Grandpa. So it'd be mom and dad, Uncle
Yep.
Phil's mom and dad. What do you know about Grandpa's upbringing?
He was like any little Lutheran boy, probably in the Chicago area and up north, where he was brought to the church as a Lutheran. His daddy was a hard worker to make ends meet, and carpenter. And what's interesting about that is many of us learned that trade, uh, not so officially as a carpenter, but working with our hands.
Yeah. So growing up, I know that Grandpa was in the Navy, but do you know what was his story about the Navy, World War II? Was he involved with that?
Yes, and they had to, jobs were scarce, so they lied about his age, changed his birth certificate to give him a year more. And when he finally did get into there as a midshipman, I think they call it the Coast Guard, after 6 months, they released him because of health deficiencies.
Okay, so he was in the Navy for a little bit, but not really
Right.
for long. And do
But,
you know
but long enough to get buried.
okay.
The
And do you know what the
cemetery.
health issue was, or
He always said it was a
okay,
thyroid problem.
okay. And so I know a lot of the persons were in Moody Bible. So how did he get first kind of plugged into Moody Bible in Chicago?
Uh, Through his salvation at the Rock Island Railroad, I believe that's where it was, a man pestered him, and he was very angry about it, but it became his salvation, where he finally realized that only justified through faith, and that put him in the context of people who knew Moody, and he eventually enrolled there as a student.
Okay. And so did he meet Grandma there? You know,
No, he didn't. She went to Northern Baptist Seminary, I understand. So I have no idea.
how they met?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I always assumed that Grandma went to Moody and Grandpa went to Moody.
She sang on a trio for the radio there, and she might have gone there one year, but she was at Northern Baptist. I remember that fact there. But her and her two sisters had a very popular trio that sang
On the radio?
on the radio. Yeah.
Okay. And that's like
And he met her at an elevator. This is the big story.
Oh, okay.
So the guys would comment. That's back when you did them by hand, and you had an operator, and they would say, "Roy's spending a whole lot of time in between floors there. More than necessary."
So he was the elevator operator
Yeah,
at that time?
yeah.
At the radio station? Or
I don't know where exactly it was. I don't know if it was at Moody or if it was in the. I think it was more downtown Chicago. He was delivering. He delivered things for some reason, but anyway, he took a liking to her.
So I eventually Grandma and Grandpa move. They get married, right?
Uh-huh.
And they move down to Arkansas. So
Yes.
what was that? How did that? Do you know why they chose Arkansas or?
Yes, Arkansas was considered basically an African mission field back then. People supposedly did not wear shoes and things like that, and there was a lot of truth to that. In the hills, the cities were more refined, but so they came down as missionaries, kind of third world country like.
Mm-hmm. Um. And so where was the first? I mean, the first place they live in Arkansas.
The first place they lived was, I think we call it Scottsville. Actually, there's another place up in Dover, by Dover. The older boys would know. a little bit better because they actually were
living there.
living there. Yeah.
So in the order of siblings, what is the order of siblings?
You have John, the oldest, and then Steve. These are all separated by a couple of years, a couple to several. And then Joel, then Ruth, Daniel, myself, Lydia, and then finally Nathan, the youngest.
So you're third from the last.
Third from the last. Yes.
And was there like a natural separation?
Yeah.
Like olders and youngers,
Yeah.
or
The people who bridge the gap basically are the Aunt Ruth to you, your mom.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of bridged the gap because I went to school with her, and then obviously Nate, Lydia, I was around them a lot, so she was kind of the bridge of the gap. The other three at the top, they were kind of a group too. So
group of their own.
Group of their own. Only recently, in the last 15 years or so, has Joel, since he decided to move here, become part of our clique.
Yeah, yeah. So growing up is mostly you, Uncle Dan, Mom, and Lydia kind of hanging out with Uncle Nate, or
Yes. I don't ever remember fighting with Joel, Steve, or John. They were mostly, by the time my mind had started clicking, they were out of the house at that Marcoma Bible Academy, a boarding academy.
Okay, so what was like young early life school? What was school like? Were you homeschooled or you
No, never. That was not invented back then.
Okay,
There was no sense of that. And
so first grade you're going to.
I was the one of the family who got to try out a new government program, and it was pre-Head Start or Head Start, and the younger ones and a little older ones were kind of jealous because I got to do it, if I remember, a little bit in the summer, and they would give you new clothes and stuff. So I come home with new clothes.
Yeah, so is like a boarding school or is it just like a regular school?
Just a school, not our regular Rudy school, but just they were trying it out as a state, experimenting with that. And I got to do fun things in class that people never thought of back then, playing the store and things.
So you're living in Rudy.
Living in Rudy, yeah,
Rudy,
and
Arkansas.
Hobtown, yeah, Hobtown.
And how far away is school? Like
probably about 12, 15 miles.
And so there's a bus that picks you up, or
bus
your mom...
would come out there, yeah. And
Okay.
that was the source of a lot of our problems, being preacher kids. A lot of fighting and things. But country people are a little rough.
Yeah, any good stories about that?
Yeah. There was a family called the Pixley family, and they had a large family too. Their daddy was a prize fighter, and so he had mostly boys, or maybe all boys, and he taught them how to fight, to box. And so it was always, we knew when we came up to the school time that on the bus we would be asked to fight. So Dan was the most famous. He finally stood up. Steve stood up, and he came home one day with Lee Pixley, which we've had the privilege of meeting even recently. But Dad told him, he said, Steve, you can take it for the Lord, or you can hit him in the nose. It won't be anyway good. So he came home that day. So Dad, I hit him right in the nose. So they were good friends after that. But we still had the other brothers after that, we still had to match up with them.
With the so they're pretty much like matched you in age.
Matched us perfectly.
Yeah.
They knew we're preachers' kids.
Mm-hmm. And that was your dad not kind of accepted in the...
He was a northerner, and so we had no relatives, and that's a different thing that now our family has relatives living all around us, but I never saw my grandma and grandpa. Rarely saw an uncle and aunt, but it was totally different than what your family is now.
So because you guys were kind of from out of town, just not really accepted.
Two strikes, out of town, spoke with a northern accent, didn't know the ways, and Dad was a preacher.
Okay.
And they had run the last preacher out of town.
Okay, so was it like, I don't know if Persson was direct opposition, like open opposition, or just kind of like subtle?
There were things that we look back on maybe that they could have been ironed out, but there were some serious doctrinal issues and behavioral problems with the kids. Dad in a class, and you'll probably hear this from some of the others, but they were acting up, and he says, "Y'all need to stop acting like a bunch of jackasses." and that didn't go over too
To the kid. So what were your grades like in school growing up?
well. I remember my grades early. It really wasn't important to me, and mom and dad didn't push it, but basically I was a B guy,
Hmm.
probably a B guy,
Yeah.
you know.
And how was that for your family? Normal or?
Yeah, there were people. I would say I'm the least of all of them, but I was pushed on by their prowess.
Mhm.
Your mom, particularly, was a student. She was very smart, and all of them were very smart. I was the one that probably didn't have it.
So, school's not necessarily what you enjoyed, but I know you have played a lot of music. And when did you first kind of get involved playing music?
The little bit about childhood I remember about music is when somebody hit a note on the piano, and I was just joking around like little kids. They say things they don't even think about, but I was just naming the notes. You know, I said, joking, I said, quit hitting that C. And I remember the family stopping, whoever was there, looking at me, and they said, "How do you know that?" Yeah, I was unaware that you weren't
Hmm.
supposed to know that. So because of that, there was a good teacher in town that
So
helped.
you could tell even when you're young different. You could
Perfect
distinguish.
pitch,
You
yeah,
could
perfect
distinguish
pitch.
even though you didn't really know the names of the notes.
No,
You could distinguish between them.
right. I just learned from your mom, Ruth. She had started piano. We always had a piano in the house, whether it was from the Salvation Army or what. But Dad always, and he even took to tuning it,
Hmm.
which I'm not sure how well a job he did, but we always had a piano to play on, so I was aware of notes and things.
So my mom was playing music, and then you started playing music. But from what I understand, not everybody was
No,
learning music.
they playful. They gripe that if they'd have had a chance, they'd have been just like us. But that truth is, the one thing maybe I have over them, the one thing, the only thing, is maybe I was a little bit more able to adapt to the music because of hearing the notes. And,
Yeah. So did your parents? Did they only have you and mom studying,
uh,
or
uh,
how was there like?
Uncle Joel was there too with the accordion, and he did really well with accordion, despite his missing finger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Were you there when he lost his finger?
I was not. No, it was
Do
before
you
I was.
remember anything about that? Like
No, I just remember it's kind of funny. Like
he just was always
he
that
could
way.
always pick his nose a little bit better than everybody else with a little finger.
um, yeah. So you learned piano young, but was there any other instruments that you were learning, or just
No,
piano?
I was brainless at that time, and I was entered into many competitions
Oh,
and
so you're competing.
competing. This was a guild, the piano guild.
So what does a competition look like?
Competitions are. It looks like you go to a university or somewhere, a big city in the state, and you play. Like when I was a really little kid, I play 16 pieces from memory.
16.
Yeah,
And how long does that take? How long are each of these 16?
they're this one pagers or whatever. But
Okay.
they wanted to get they want to get enough songs that you might not have had to pay all 16, but you had to learn that many by
Mhm.
memory, and then you played before these judges. Many times they were nuns. They were nuns, and that was scary.
Yeah.
But,
So growing up, I only had to learn one,
yeah.
but you would have to learn
Oh
16.
yeah. You
And
did.
how long does it take you to get ready for one of these?
I don't even remember. All I remember is, and that's what's motivated me even now. I know what motivates people is prizes, and so even though I was good at music, I liked playing baseball out in the pasture. I liked exploring, and then mom would say practice. And a good lesson maybe to future parents is that don't always believe the kid. I complained, but mom, in the way that she reacted is she got me up earlier than all the other kids to get my 30 minutes practice in, so I wouldn't have to worry about it when I got off the bus after the day.
So, was it a big deal when you went to a competition?
To me, it was
Like the whole family goes, or is
no,
it just
no,
your
no,
dad
no,
or your mom?
just me, Ruth, and Joel. We would go, and we knew that it would appear in the newspaper, and that's kind of how we found out.
Hmm.
And so there was superior rating, excellent rating, and so I think I'm not sure, but I think I always got the highest, which I always expected to. I didn't do it for that. I did it for the catcher's mask. I did it for
Yeah.
the pocket watch. I did it
There
for the
you
little
go.
transistor radio where I started listening to the Cardinals.
Hmm.
And in the country that's a big deal because there's no devil vision.
Yeah, you can't get
We
any.
didn't.
It's just radio. Huh, I never knew that there was like competitions. And so your dad, when you're younger, you're probably going to Old Rock Haven. Is this true?
Yes.
And obviously now you do the New Rock Haven Bible Camp. But what was the Old Rock Haven camp like
The Old Rock
growing up?
Haven was authentic in that it was they had a place on the federal operated river now, the Buffalo River. So we actually swam the Buffalo River. We had a dock on the Buffalo River, and it was okay back then. But now you don't do anything like that. So eventually, that was bought out. The Congress enacted
Hmm.
a law that seized the land around it, and so we were moved. But that was authentic. A real Indian caves that we visited,
Hmm.
bows and arrows. And
So what was it like? I mean, now we play a lot of games and it's pretty structured. But
yeah,
what was it like? Just like a day at camp.
what you had is you had a bunch of older missionaries, or getting older missionaries, operating the kind of sports, and they were kind of lax. You wouldn't have. Since then, we've refined it where when you play a ping pong game, you have a monitor, and it's kind of like you kind of kept your own score, or that kind of thing.
So there's still teams and stuff like that, or is it
No,
all
nothing.
just like kind of individual?
There were cabins, and the way that worked is that you had this cabin award, and basically it dealt with cleaning and stuff. But
Hmm.
you were a unit. The guys and the girls had their different cabins, and these were real cabins. They were wood cabins,
Yeah.
lots of snakes.
um, so I don't know. Were you always you were going with your brothers and like was that? Did it only last a week or was it longer back then?
Yeah, it would last a week, and that was a big thing for Mom because Dad would be away for a weekend. And that was
Hmm.
generally when the escaped convict would come out, get out of prison, and he'd be roaming the woods. He was
So
armed and dangerous, and so we would imagine things. I remember Dad
mhm.
being away one time, and
So when your siblings are older, you're not old enough to go to
no,
camp.
we're at home with Mom.
You're with Hope.
And the way that it kind of appeased us is Dad let us each have a bottle of pop for the week, and it lasted all week because we kept watering it down
Yeah.
after we drank it.
So what age were you allowed to go to camp? Was it like there's an age where you're grown up?
I remember it was probably around 10 or so, 10 or 11, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the competitions were really serious. I never really won. I don't remember winning much of the competitions because people were pretty good, and there's pretty rough country boys.
That's interesting. So a lot of the people from your church, would they go to camp?
No,
No,
no one,
nobody.
nobody. Yeah.
So where are these people coming
These
from?
people are coming from the hills, different missionaries. They would teach in the schools. Uh, you know, off time they'd have Bible classes. You were allowed that back then,
Hmm.
and they'd connect, and then you'd get all these hillbillies from the woods.
So did your dad have like a group of people that he was working with?
Yeah, he had. It was a lot of them were members of the IFCA, the Independent Fundamental Churches of America, which still exists. And but they were missionaries as he was, and supported by a church. Some maybe by the same church, Moody Church, sent Mom and Dad out.
Okay, and so some of these people are with Moody, but some of them are not. Or
Some of them were not. Yes,
okay,
yes.
okay. So did your dad work with anybody that he went to college with or anything
No,
like that? No.
no. I think they met down there. They all met down there.
So a lot of the people at camp are just kind of connections that other people had made.
That's right. Yeah, and they all had that calling to go to that camp,
Mhm.
and they formed Marie Olson, a woman actually, was the head of the camp, and so she was very energetic. And she'd go around to different schools and show Moody science films. But she had the energy to do that. And there were a lot of single women too helping,
Yeah.
a few families.
So did that like have an impact on why you want to do, or why you always do like Rockhaven Camp now?
Yeah, you saw the value of camp and how you would have
Mhm.
times where you'd listen to talks of the Bible and you'd see lives changed. And it's just we thought that's basically in our mind the only option for reaching out to teens.
Yeah. So as you get older, going into high school, are you going to is still Rudy, or did you move?
The school burned down when I was, I think, in the sixth grade, so that would make it probably early '70s, very very early '70s,
Hmm.
and that's when I was given a decision I could continue on with piano or not. And since there was no teacher after that, we moved. I didn't have any teacher, so no music.
What So if this is in the 70s, is this during like the Vietnam War? Do you remember?
I remember the Vietnam War.
Was
Yes.
there like any worry about your older siblings?
Yeah, older. Word about John, but he had a pretty high number. What they did back then is you were issued a number by random. If your number was low, you would probably get picked. If you had a higher number, you probably wouldn't. So mom
So
always prayed about that.
yeah, he
No.
never was really. Was he living in the area or had he already moved away?
He was going to. He had gotten out of Marcoma Bible Academy, if I remember.
That's where he graduated high
Yeah,
school.
and so he was at that age, 17, 18.
Mhm.
And so it was a threat at that time.
So in high school, a lot of your siblings go to Marcoma Bible, but did you go to Marcoma?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So when do you leave? What does that look like when?
You leave as a freshman. It's freshman through senior, and basically, mom and dad's idea was that we're going to raise you up right, but we're going to give you a choice. You don't have to go. They would want you to go, but you don't have to go. We've raised you right. You make the choice. Of course, they guide us in that. They weren't foolish enough to just give us everything decision. But it was a work program school, so they liked it. Mom really liked it. It claims that that's how we learned how to work. We'd have to do dairy or pigs or maintenance or laundry for the girls.
Oh, okay. So you're working. What does that schedule look like? School.
Pretty rough. It was a very challenging school, and even though we had about 100 people in it, freshman through senior, very gifted. Most of them, a lot of missionary kids, good soccer players, good basketball players, and so everybody basically went out for the sports. And they all tried to sing, and they.
So what was your job?
My job was pigs.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that is just
It
taking
just
care
you
of them,
scrape pig pens and you
clean them out.
clean the crap. Yeah, it was nasty.
And is that every morning or in the evenings?
Yeah, you had a schedule. You had to get so many hours a week. And in the summer, when you did it to buy your tuition, you did it every day. And then you go out and hay in the fields and stuff.
Okay, so you are gone. When do you get to go home?
You get to go home during the breaks, and mom and dad would have to come pick us up in an old car.
And how far away from home is
That right there was probably a couple hours, at least a couple hours.
Because
Yeah.
where is Marcoma at?
Marcoma is right over the line there in Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Okay,
That's the
Oklahoma.
Cherokee Nation
Okay.
capital. Yes.
And what is the school? Is it like a compound kind of?
It was. It dealt with it.
Kinda
It
looked
started
like a
off as
farm?
an old farmhouse, big farmhouse, which is the guys' dorm. They built an annex, they called it, and that was for the girls. And then, as the big deal was keeping the girls and guys
Separate?
fall in love. Yeah.
What time do you have to wake up to go to work?
And that was a big deal. Like if you're doing pig pens, it could be 4:30, and you're responsible for getting yourself up. And back then, the alarm clocks were wind up kind of, and you pull out the lever, and you didn't pull it out far enough and didn't go off, and that was an automatic deduction rate.
Was there any do you remember any incidents of not waking up?
I did it once, and I learned my lesson. I remember the farm supervisor in his pig clothes, stinky, hovering over me. Says, "What are you doing?" And so I paid, even though our name was famous there. He docked my grade.
So, what did you play sports in high school?
Every sport.
Okay.
Did every sport.
Which was
Every sport they had. They had baseball. They had basketball. They had soccer. Didn't have track yet. Uncle Nate, this one, got involved in track. He did quite well.
And what was your favorite or most?
We did the worst at baseball, but that was kind of fun. Just it's whoever could throw a strike. Basically got to pitch. And soccer was fun. I remember training for that, and we were the best in the area. We a lot of times we kind of basically an undefeated season, but it was back during the time when soccer was taking off. But we would take on the Northeastern State University there, Tahlequah,
Yeah.
and we would beat them. They were good. They were big college guys, but we had missionary kids who were smart, and so they never broadcast those games. They were kind of scrimmages.
Yeah.
We could beat them. Yeah.
So soccer was your favorite?
Yeah, it
or
was big.
most-
Yeah. It's
And was there any state tournaments or?
we'd go to what was called the regional tournament of the Christian schools, and we'd pretty well wipe up.
You win that usually?
Yeah. If you look back in the old annuals, it's pretty telling.
So are you still practicing music?
Do I still practice music?
No, well, during this time when you're high school.
Oh yeah,
what is that like?
that's when it came from myself that there was a music teacher there, and I didn't really care how good they were. I just want to get back into music. So
Mm-hmm.
I got back into it. I was really inspired by people who played and sang. I thought that means something. You can have a song that really means something. It's not just interpretive.
Yeah, when you're playing and
And
singing.
that's back from Elton John and Billy Joel and those boys.
Yeah, so you're listening to. You have a radio. Did you have a radio?
We did, and there were things that were forbidden. You would hear them, because radios go wherever you go.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So you'd hear a thing, and it really intrigued you. And those things really intrigued me, that a person could just take a piano and you could sing with it, and it was okay. They made it cool.
Yeah. So who are your favorite artists growing up?
Elton John was probably the best, and then Billy Joel, and then with the guitar, that James Taylor, he did something, and he did a little bit later. He was a little bit later than those guys. But.
So are you like, if you're liking these guys, is it kind of taboo at Marcoma?
Yeah, because you started hearing about their lives, That's back before Elton John declared himself to be homosexual. It really broke my heart when I heard that. But then I realized then that after many times of being told, thinking about it and thinking, okay, they can't be idols or anything like that. They're but you can grab the ideas they have.
Yeah,
that's legal.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, music a big influence in your life.
We had many singing groups. And our family always got in the top singing groups.
Okay,
groups.
so you guys would just. What was that looking like?
We used to
Go to
travel on
churches?
weekends, so it made the schedule much more difficult, because instead of having study hall at night, which we didn't mind, but you practice. Everybody else go to study hall, and you're the elite,
Was there any benefits, like you don't have to work as much?
No,
to being
you
in
still had
singing?
to put in your hours, and so, you'd have to kind of negotiate your schedule. You still have to get 4:30, and then the weekends you didn't get free. You were there traveling around this 3-4 state area.
Yeah, and you're going to churches?
Churches,
Or,
going to churches, yeah. Spending
And
time in homes.
kind of singing for them?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you, I don't know, do you find that like valuable experience?
It was very valuable. You learned how to perform. That's when I first got the idea that I could learn guitar. I always thought it was too hard. And then one guy told me, no, it's easier than anything you've ever done. So I did that, and then finally I just started playing guitar, and for singing, we did live music a lot.
So another thing that you're pretty proficient at is like automotive things. When was your first car? Is it
It's
in high school?
very interesting about the automobile thing, and this needs to be told. The idea is that I was nothing at mechanical, but I yearned for it, and I remember even got caught working on the Sabbath.
At Marcoma?
No.
Oh,
At home.
This is before high
you
school?
didn't work on Sunday. You didn't do anything, and I figured that when the sun went down, it was okay. And so I remember doing out there, and then I think Dad came and I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, the sun's gone down." No. And so I take all I knew to do is just take engines apart, and I wasn't even knowledgeable of anything, but I longed for it. I saw my brothers who knew how to do it, and I said, "Oh, I just would love to do that."
So your older brothers are good at
They're
mechanics,
good. Yeah,
and then you.
Yeah,
well,
Steve particularly. He made all the go-karts out of scrap.
Yeah, so if you guys aren't allowed to do anything on the Sabbath, what was that? What did that day usually look like
It
for
was
you guys?
you take naps in the afternoon.
Okay, so church in the morning, obviously.
Church in the morning. You could not play baseball in the field, in the pasture. We had enough people where you could play baseball, but you didn't. You weren't allowed to do that. Never ever. Yeah.
Do you see value in that? Like,
Yeah,
looking back?
there is. I mean, not as a matter of keeping the law or anything like that. But I think Mom made it. She made it known that was a special day, and we set it aside to the Lord. And we'd also in the afternoon we'd study for the quiz that night. I remember going through the Gospel of John. They'd have questions, for us to answer and memorize verses. So
Interesting. Yeah, I never knew that was a big deal.
big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So growing up, you're watching Uncle Steve and
Yeah.
and
If
your
anything
dad
needs fixed.
probably,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so you're kind of looking up to that, and that's
Oh
how it
yeah, he
kinda
was always
started.
under a car. Yeah, he was the preacher, but he always had a car in the rack. That's another thing. He always had to have a rack.
Overhead rack.
No, one that you build. You dig a pit, and you put beams on it, and then you drive.
Like the one you have at your house right now.
Yes, that's right. He brought that one in. We helped him build that one. All our houses had that.
Huh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And were you always helping with him, or were you
No,
allowed to help with him?
I didn't know anything. I didn't
So
know
you'd
anything.
watch, but you're not allowed to help.
Yeah, you watch, but then you'd get distracted and go
Kinda
run off
leave.
in the woods. Yeah.
So in high school, is this like Are you still doing stuff like that on the
I'm
farm?
starting to learn some things in high school. We, just working on the farm, and a tractor would break down, a shear pen would break,
Hmm.
plowing or something. And it's another thing, we got to drive tractors and hay and all that stuff. So we had a few classes, vocational classes. They started adding up, but I still didn't know how to do stuff. It's only until I got my first car, and
What was it?
it was my first car was a car that was in a garage fire next to Joel's place there in Chicago. The guy gave it to him, and it was totally charred. The dash is all bent, burnt out and stuff. But he went in there, put a battery in it, and it started. So he took that car and he drove it for a while, and then I got it.
So this is when were you in college at this time?
I was beginning. That was the time I was getting to college. I never had a car before
In
that.
high school, no
No,
cars. So,
didn't need one.
but you're driving tractors and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
working
yeah.
on
We
them.
knew how to shift. And stuff.
So did you ever want to be a farmer?
I wanted to
Working.
be a hermit.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I remember the question coming up in school. What do you want to be? I thought the thing I'd love to be is be a hermit. I could picture myself with a stream on my property.
Hmm.
Not that we ever had any property, but just that would be the ideal. And I'd be on the porch by myself, and I'd be just watching it and just going out there once in a while if I want to fish or whatever.
Yeah, but you didn't ever want to like have a farm or,
Oh
really.
yeah, it just wasn't reachable.
Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't have that.
interesting. So, when you graduated high school,
Yeah, 1978.
1978, and then you immediately go to Moody, or
Yeah, and
what
it
was that
basically,
decision making like?
basically, when you're a senior, you don't know what you're doing, and none of them ever do. And basically, they're guided by their folks or whatever. And, some people they bluff it, but they really don't know. And you can see that in college when people have to backtrack and take an extra year.
Yeah.
But I just followed. I just followed whoever was before me. And Dan went to Moody,
Hmm.
and I basically at that time I was starting to get a brain. I remember walking down a path one day and then the light coming on, realizing I could think for myself. But I just followed. Went to Moody. Good
So
choice.
Uncle Dan's one older than you,
Yes,
and he
yes.
went to Moody.
He went to
You
Moody.
go to Moody.
I go to Moody. Yeah.
But Mom didn't go to Moody, right?
No, oh, she was a little rebel, little girl. But actually, she was. She always considered other options and stuff. And I remember it was to my benefit that she came. She did not. She did not go her senior year to Markham Bible Academy, which was anathema. No one had ever done that.
Really?
And
So
she came back.
she didn't like it there?
No, I think she just. I don't know what the reason is, but she came back to Washburn High School, and I was in middle school at that time, and it was very helpful for me because I got to know her more.
Oh,
She was
because
at home.
she's living at home, not
She's at
away.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
and Dan's away, obviously.
Mhm.
He's
At Marcoma
at
still.
Yeah,
So is that kind of weird?
kind of weird, but I thought it was great. She stood for the Lord. There was a lot of evil there.
Yeah. So she just didn't like Marcoma, or what was
No,
the deal?
I don't know. You'd have to get her word on that. But the thing is that she was always kind of a pioneer. She wanted to do it different,
Hmm.
and so
Yeah.
I respect her for it.
So she goes to college in Kansas, and you go to college after Uncle Dan. And like, getting to Moody, was that always because it's in Chicago, pretty far
Yeah.
away from Arkansas?
Oh, it's big time. Yeah, and we had to work our way through. So we had to scrounge for jobs in the summer, and we would never make it with our work. But very interesting development part of our life is we would try what we could, but in the end, God would supply the need. And on my personal testimony was I learned it from Dad, Mom, that you never told people your need.
Yeah.
You never told them that. You trusted Him and let Him figure it out for you.
Yeah. So how much
Being
does
here-
Moody Bible cost, and how much are you making? Basically?
Oh my goodness! It was more than we could make in a summer, so I can't even remember the exact cost. It sometimes comes up maybe $4,000 or $5,000.
Mhm.
There's no scholarships.
So you would stay in Chicago once it was time to go to Moody. Basically, you're moving to Chicago
And you work. You get more money there. You
Mhm.
can find a job.
because it's in the city.
Yeah, it's easy.
And what was your first job there?
First job was a gas station, and this gas station is unlike other people who work at gas stations now. You pump the gas. You check their oil if they wanted you to.
So somebody drives up and they don't get out of their car,
They don't.
basically.
No.
Okay.
You set the pump, whatever, and then if they want cigarettes, that's what roll it bottom be. You have to go in and get that while you're pumping gas, or a Coke or whatever. And then to pay, you didn't have any computerized stuff. You had this little machine that you just wipe it over and it imprints it,
Yeah.
and everything's done by hand. So you had all this, and you had a rush coming in, and you'd be the only one, and you knew that if somebody went off while you're pumping and they just kind of put the thing up, took off, that was out of your paycheck. So
Yeah. Is there
it's a
any
terrible job.
that have ever happened to you?
Oh
or-
yeah,
Yeah.
He would take it. He would take it out of your paycheck.
And but you have some older siblings living in Chicago.
Yeah, so
at
they've
this
gone
time.
through the Chicago thing. They park cars. That was the big job that they get. You make some money.
Valet.
Valet parking. Millionaires come in and they tip you. But I never was part of that.
So Uncle John's living in Chicago at this time.
He is, and Joel too.
Okay. So but Uncle
Yeah.
Steve is
He is out in Sycamore, Illinois.
Okay.
He's been at that church all his life.
suburbs, kind
Yeah,
of.
suburbs, yeah.
So he's not
And
really.
I stayed the summer with him working at the gas station, so I got to know him better.
Okay. Okay. So
And I worked with the youth of the church.
okay, I didn't know that. So you're going to Moody, basically working, and Uncle John and Joel are in the area.
And they're giving me jobs on the weekend if I can do it.
Okay. And what are they doing?
Contracting and painting. That's what they're the original starters.
So they're the original painters.
The original painters in construction and all that. Yeah.
Interesting. Was there any good stories about Moody?
The good stories about Moody is that there's a lot of good stories. We would do a lot of pranking, and that's when we did it in high school too. But I know it's out of vogue now because you get in big trouble. But we would prank each other, and we did it in a cool way. We didn't do it to hurt somebody physically, but we did it to humiliate, which is totally different.
Yeah.
To build character.
So you played soccer in high school? Are you playing soccer at Moody?
No, I didn't get in any music. I was going to double major.
Yeah. What was your major?
My major was Bible theology, Greek. I mean, it's kind of a double major, but I was going to do music, and I took as many music classes as they would let me without being a musical thing. But the first day when I went there, I went down that music hall, and these people were so weird. I got thinking, I don't want to turn out like that. So I decided not to do it.
That's interesting. So majoring in theology and then Greek. Is Uncle Dan going to school with you at the same time?
No, he had just graduated, but he was the one who brought me to the college for the first day.
Okay, so
He got me
he's
set up.
4 years older than you, or
He's 4, yeah.
okay, so
But
exactly.
he was a senior. When he was a senior, I was a freshman at Markhoma.
A freshman. Oh, so when he was a senior at Markhoma.
I was a freshman, yeah.
Okay, so
but
he.
Moody's just a 3-year school. So he was out.
Okay. That makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah, he encouraged me a lot, though. He told me all what I'd feel like,
Mm-hmm.
when he was gone, you'd feel lonely and all that. So he got me ready for that.
Yeah. So, but I also know that you went to UCA after Moody.
Right. And so after that, in my mind, somehow I got the idea that really you need a vocation,
Yeah. So you studied, theology. You
First.
graduate.
Yeah, and Mom always says, do that first or you never do it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what, and I did that on her advice.
hmm
Dan also did.
So same degree as Uncle Dan, or a little
I
bit
think
different?
so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he went on to get his master's. He did a little Hebrew and stuff like that.
At Moody.
At Calvary and down in Pensacola, Florida.
Oh,
So he
okay.
got his master's there.
So when you show up, he's moving to Florida, basically.
Yeah, he's moving to, it's either Florida or Calvary Bible College. Probably Florida, Pensacola.
Okay. Interesting. And so pretty much you're just studying and working one or the other the whole time.
We are also, that's where I really met the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I had a concern that I want to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of our practical Christian work assignments landed me at a church to be a Sunday school teacher. And, we had other witnessing opportunities to do there, but the Sunday school thing, it really, I thought I could impact people more like that. So I'd stayed on the rest of the time. Once I got that assignment, I did it.
You just kept doing it.
Yeah, you just kept doing it. Yeah.
And what was your experience like like basically your testimony at Moody, was it due to the classes that you're taking, or
My testimony was that I was the conservative party pooper, because I would say, no, we're not supposed to do that. I mean, and like the drinking would come up or something, and which they weren't supposed to do, but people did,
yeah?
And I would just say, no, you're not supposed to do that, immoral things. And so in a way, I was a kind of quiet guy, but I didn't allow that around me.
Okay, but in at Marcoma, it's a Bible too. So
Mhm.
did that have an influence on like?
There were wild people there too, particularly toward the end.
But you wouldn't say you're saved at Marcoma when you were living
I,
there.
I don't know how God judges that. But I
Yeah.
like Jesus, and I would talk to people about Jesus. But
Hmm.
and only when I read Romans 3, it says, "Our throats are open graves, tongues practice deceit, voices of vipers on our lips, ruin and misery mark our ways, and so etc."
Hmm.
That I had made a commitment that year that I was going to read the Bible as if it was written to me. And so when I saw that, I thought, okay, that's talking to me.
So
I
you're
don't.
reading just personal devotions, or is it for an assignment?
It's no, not an assignment. It's.
Okay.
I'd memorized the book of Romans.
At
Moody,
earlier at
the
Moody.
first year. The first year I memorized. I somehow made a commitment. Somebody said, if you're in prison, they take the Bible away from you. Which book you want? And I just heard somebody say this. And it's true. It is true. The book of Romans.
So you had memorized that earlier.
And I memorized that, and as well as a couple other small books.
So yeah, so you're like reading it, we're just in your dorm room, and
Yeah, I'd get up at 5 o'clock. That year, I'd get up at 5 o'clock
every day.
Yeah, and that meant that I couldn't stay up late with the guys to play cards.
Hmm.
The folks had never wanted us to play cards, and so I just kind of walked away from it, which is the best decision I ever made in my life. And I'd always say, I don't play cards. And then I'd also lock my door. And
So
like
you had a
Sodom and Gomorrah.
roommate, or
Yeah, I had a roommate.
you just wake up and go somewhere
I
else,
go
or
down there. They had a second floor. They had a place where you could they had a
study?
little chapel, and then they had a little place where you could just sit.
And were you the only kind of person doing that, or is
Yeah.
it like
Yeah, on my floor I was. Yeah.
okay, yeah, didn't have any buddies. This is
I
like
know.
a buddy
Eventually,
thing.
I got a buddy. Then after we had a great relationship, and he got a girl, so that kind of
Mhm.
changed. But for a while we did. Yeah, we had a great relationship.
Did you ever like consider dating anybody in college, or was that like
There was a girl, uh, but I saw her family after just considering for a while. I thought,
yeah?
I'd have to deal with that family, so
Yeah.
we kind of pulled it. And so I still communicate with her today. In fact.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So anything else major happen at Moody while you're there? Do you get to know your? You probably get to know your older siblings better while you're there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I realized how much a sacrifice they made for us. The guys going through Moody and working, they would pay us more than we're worth. And we made terrible mistakes. I remember one day John sent me on a job with his car, his old work car, and I never made it. So he called up the other day and says, "How'd it go?" I said, "I never found it."
You just couldn't find
And
the
it's a
place.
job he needed to get done,
Yeah.
just so they put up with a lot of stuff. All of this. He says, "What? You never found it?"
So you just like took his car, drove around trying to look for it.
And there's a place called Six Corners there on Western Avenue, and to this day, I don't know how you turn. I don't know where they go in different directions.
So you, and then you just come back. You bring his car back to him
Mm-hmm.
after looking for it all day. Just can't find it.
All
Then you come-
afternoon, yeah.
Just
And
came
an
back home
afternoon,
and
he wanted like maybe 6 windows painted on the house, and I never found it.
this is obviously before like GPS and stuff.
Oh yeah, no,
That's funny.
Yeah.
Were you like just kind of stressed out? I don't know.
I
like,
just I
can't
couldn't
find
do any
it.
better. I mean, you could ask people directions and stuff, but I never found it.
Okay, so you graduate Moody, and then you head down to UCA.
Yeah,
It says UCA is in Conway, Arkansas.
yeah, and I think a good question to ask is, how did I decide to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's a big question: is how do you know God's will? And in short, I don't know, but in long, Romans chapter 12. It says, "I beseech you, brothers, by the mercies of God, that you present your body a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to Him." And then it goes, says, "This is how you know what God's will is." And so, does it come as a decision that's written down? No. But what happened is a little girl in my Sunday school class just mentioned that she had an industrial arts class, and how the teacher, she'd have so much fun building things, and the teacher would just share with the class. I thought, wow, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
It was kind of deceptive a little bit, because it wasn't actual that way. But I did visit the school, and just a little thing like that. I said, okay, I'm gonna go down to University of Central Arkansas because that's near where Mom and Dad live. I always wanted to go home. I love home.
Arkansas.
I love home.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they're living. Are they still living?
They're living there.
Where like
in Leslie or Trace Ridge, we call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had moved from Rudy.
They had moved from there, and they went to Trace Ridge.
Okay. And Dad, your grandpa is preaching still?
He's preaching, but he's getting to that retirement age, and he's starting to say, I just can't collect my thoughts anymore. He lived, 30-something more years, but anyway.
Yeah.
So when I went to the school, I planned to be an industrial arts teacher. I went for 3 years, and I was an industrial arts teacher for 3 years. But during that time, that's when Mom and Dad decided to move up to Little Rock. And so we got a house, Persson house.
Yeah, so you go to Moody for 3 years, then you go to UCA for 3 years. Okay,
and that gave me nightmares because I was the oldest guy in class. And I have nightmares coming back to me that all these little guys and girls are in class and they're looking at me like, what are you doing here? But
yeah.
Anyway.
So basically, you're getting another major in.
Yes, that's right.
In teaching.
There wasn't a degree given by Moody. I could have gone on, gotten about 15 hours or so, and solidified, got a degree.
Okay.
They didn't give a degree. It's a diploma.
More like a certificate kind of thing.
That's right.
Okay, and
but
so
I got my degree from UCA.
Some UCA, and that's a teaching, basically teaching.
Teaching, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And the question people always ask is like Scottie Pippen's from UCA. Did you ever know him?
Yeah, he lived in my dorm.
Okay, same dorm.
I lived in
same floor, or
I lived in South Minton. He lived in North Minton, and I made a goal when I went there. I said I'm going to give a track, or I'm going to knock on every door in this complex.
Yeah.
So at one point I would knock on his door. He wasn't there, but I remember going to games, and the announcer saying Scottie Pippen. So he was there, but he was, he grew. He grew after college.
Yeah,
yeah.
So is that? Did you enjoy going to like basketball games?
Not much. We didn't do much.
Okay.
I was involved with the BSU because I thought that even though it was flawed.
What is BSU?
Baptist Student Union.
Okay.
And even though it was flawed, it was probably the most sound biblically. Mm-hmm. And so I tried to make a mark on that, to try to have a little Bible study in the dorm, which is very, very ineffective.
Yeah.
But
and you have friends? You have friends that you're doing this with?
The first year I was with a pretty foul guy.
In your dorm room?
In my dorm. He was my roommate. Yeah.
And then after that,
you hear things next door, just evil stuff in the dorm, which wasn't supposed to be there, drinking and carousing. And I prayed about that. And so the next year, Dwayne Hayda, who was from high school, from Markham Bible Academy, he went there to do his art degree. And so we roomed together, and then we joined up. He was an RA, resident assistant, which was trouble, and I was a PA, peer advisor. So we both had the power, but no power. They would throw feces at our door and eggs, and just they would threaten us, our life, because we were reporting the marijuana and stuff, drinking. We thought, let's just clean it up, But
try to. Didn't really
try
work.
to. No.
This is the Dwayne Hayda. That's the artist for the license plates.
He's the renowned. He's the on the All-Star list, or what they call it, Hall of Fame for Arkansas for the Game and Fish Commission.
Okay. Yeah. So he liked fishing, obviously.
Oh, we would like fishing. We people thought it was unchristian for us to do this, but we like fishing, and we would know how many cuts we had in the class, and so we'd confer together how many you got left, and we knew we would hear that the for instance,
so basically they're taking attendance and you have to be at class.
That's right. And if you miss over 3, then you're docked or you're out, whatever. A lot of them. So what we did is we'd get a report. The stripers are running on Toadsuck Dam there, off the Arkansas River, and so we said we got the guys. We got to go. They're running because they don't always run. So, but we were so poor, we'd take his truck, and his truck used more transmission fluid than it did gas, and we'd have to, we'd just eke out our pennies, and we'd get there, and then we would have weights, because you have to have weights to throw it way out there toward the dam, and you're jerking, you're trying to jerk those stripers in, And so one time we turned to each other and said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Well, we can take a lug nut off my car."
Your car.
Yeah.
This
yeah.
is the same car that you got from Uncle Joel?
Yeah. And
That's burned out?
Yeah, we put wallpaper on the top of it to make it look vinyl wallpaper.
So, like, what's the strategy? Take one from each wheel?
Yeah, and as many as we needed. So.
And what are you doing with these fish when you catch them? Eating them?
It's hard because you're in a dorm. You can't really have a place to cook them. You know?
Yeah.
So I had an understanding with the BSU that I was allowed there, you know, because I'd go there to continue. And they did look up to it. But we'd have to go in after hours. We'd cook those fish. He was a good cook, Dwayne was.
So it's pretty good.
But it smelled like fish. It's just really hard on us. Hard on us to get away with that. You know, it's bad.
You ever get in trouble for, like,
and people comment, you know. So
making fun of you?
Well, I think we better lighten up, you know, not mess up people's stuff. You know?
Oh, that's funny. So, like, are you just fishing, or do you hunt?
Oh, we would
too,
we would go to the Red River and do some trout fishing. He was big into fly fishing. I was never, but
okay.
And even on my wall, I have a big lunker we caught one time. And the fact is that we on breaks, you know, we never knew where each other was going to be because he was several hours away from me and stuff.
Yeah.
But one time I thought on break, I thought I'm just going to go up there and just see because the fishing is down, the tourists are gone. And who would I meet up there but Dwayne Hayden?
So you guys weren't even planning to meet each other. So he's kind of your buddy at
Yeah,
UCA,
big buddy, yeah.
and you still kind of keep in touch.
Yeah,
with
I
him?
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where does he live now?
He lives up in Mountain Home.
Okay, so pretty far away.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a gallery up there.
So you graduate UCA.
Yeah.
And now you're teaching. Is this so? You're still living in Conway when you're teaching, or are you?
Yes, I was, and I would commute to North Little Rock, to Lakewood Junior High School. It was a middle school, and so I was, you know, teaching under guy, and it just so happened to be his last year.
Okay.
He put 40 years in it, and he'd always tell me, he said, "Man, if you want this job, you're going to get it. I'll get it for you." But I went to the line, the recruit line, and there's a big old line out the door. People want to get this job. I'm, oh boy. So I got in there, and basically the guy said, this is with guys outside waiting to get in. He says, if you want this job, you can have it. And he says, do you have any ideas that might go against that? And I said, yeah. I'd seen enough of teaching.
Yeah.
I thought, I don't want to do it. Even though I'd given 3 years to it.
So you had taught under him for 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Under 1 year. 1 year. My student teaching.
Oh, okay. So you're still at UCA technically when you're teaching.
Yes. Yes.
And then you graduate, and you're applying for this job.
Yeah, and he's retired.
And so.
Yeah, and so he said, "You see any problems with this?" Yes. He has no discipline. I mean, you can't touch the kid.
Yeah.
The very things that I kind of wanted to have control of the class.
Yeah.
But he talked me into it. He says, "No," he said, "I think you can do it." You know. So I did that for 3 years, and
3 years after UCA.
3 years after
so
I started.
Basically 4 years total.
Yeah, 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But the fact is that a guy, and he was one of my teachers at UCA, and he was a very good moral person. But somehow I listened to his advice. But he says, if you teach 1 year and you don't like it, do it again. If you teach the next year you don't like it, do it again. If you teach the next year and don't like it, get out.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, for the very first, I thought, all I got to do is endure 3 years of this.
3 years and see if it turns around, basically.
Yeah, that's basic. I took that as wisdom. I thought, well, I put some time in it, might as well. So,
and do you think there's wisdom for that, or just applying to other things in life? Like, has there ever been something where you didn't like it and it kind of changed?
Yeah, a lot of times. Jobs that we do. Or people that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just heard the other day of someone that basically I'd given up on, and they're making a comeback.
Just kind of keep going.
Keep going,
yeah. So you're working in Lakewood, and at this time FBF doesn't exist, right?
They started when I started working. And the pastor heard that I was from Moody. He was a conservative pastor, although he was known as a womanizer in his older years. And he called me in for an appointment.
Okay, so this is at which church?
At Sillen Hills Community Church.
Okay, so not FBF.
No.
Okay, so and your mom and dad have moved to Sherwood
They
now?
have moved into my house.
Okay, so you graduate from UCA and you buy a house?
I rent a house.
Okay.
And that was
And
disastrous.
not the same house that you live in
No,
now.
no.
Okay.
But it was made out of cardboard, basically.
Pretty terrible.
New cardboard house.
So they, um, we have a nice. We can edit this out. You can answer it. This is good. We get to. Is somebody important?
Blake.
Oh, hey, Blake. Blake, if you're listening to this, you're not getting answered. I'm sure you have a car problem that you need fixed.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're teaching, mom and grandma and grandpa are living with you now?
Yes.
And does Uncle Dan live with you? Because right now your situation...
He will be soon.
Eventually, okay.
Yeah.
But he's still at...
It's just me, mom and dad, and Lydia. She was doing her nursing
Okay.
in Little Rock. So then she moved in.
And Uncle Nate is in Moody?
He's still in Moody.
Okay.
Yeah.
But eventually, okay, they'll come back.
Yeah.
Because grandma and grandpa's deal was they would never own a house, right?
Right.
And
yeah,
so
it's all in my name. Yeah.
Okay. And you're just making bank off of charging them rent?
I never charged.
So teaching isn't really your thing, shop class, but you also, why was there a decision not to teach music?
Actually, I love teaching the shop thing. It was a setup that I had, and I will say this, due to my inexperience, I did not understand a kid's mentality at that age, that they'll say things that they don't mean, and I took everything so serious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they said they hated me or they wanted to kill me, I thought, nobody likes me.
Yeah.
Or if I see my name scrolled on the bathroom wall, which I saw, Persson blank and blank, okay, well, nobody likes me.
Yeah.
And so that was a very big mistake.
Kind of taking everything real seriously.
Yeah, real seriously. Yeah.
Is there a lesson? So now, this is kind of getting further on, but now you teach music to a lot of kids. Is there anything that you learned while you're teaching shop class that you kind of like lessons learned that you implemented?
One of the biggest things is, and I noticed this to the older teacher that I taught under, I said, how can you be so calm when all this chaos is around you? What chaos? And I believe that to a large extent I was able to learn that you could be calm even when things were,
Yeah, so basically, if you lose it.
Yeah, if you lose it, you're hurting.
Yeah, it doesn't help anything.
Yeah, right.
That's interesting. So you're going to church at not Silver Hills?
Before Silver Hills, we were going to Cornerstone Bible Fellowship until he contacted me.
Okay.
He wanted me to do it, and I said,
he is asking you to
take the
youth pastor,
yes.
basically,
and I didn't want to.
Okay.
And he wanted to say, you can do it. I don't think I can do it. I said, yeah, you do it. So he.
And how old? You're like 25?
I am 20, about 25, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And basically, he's wanting you to be on staff?
Yeah, $100 a week.
Quit your job and be on staff?
No, do it while I have my job at school.
Okay, same time.
Yeah.
And you said no, basically? Or
I said no, but he said, yes, I think you can. So I took it.
Okay.
It was rough.
And how many kids are you in charge of?
Start off with just a few kids, maybe about 5 to 10, but it eventually, when Nate came, that's another story itself, but we brought it up to the largest church youth group in Silver Hills.
So how many years? Yeah, so you're still teaching and doing...
So basically the teaching and the church work coincide.
Okay.
Yeah, they coincide.
And your parents are going to the same church as you?
They started going there.
Okay.
We started seeing a few little problems, and they went to another church down the road by Uncle Joel's house, which exists now, but now it's a homosexual church.
Okay.
Because they sold it.
And so you're doing youth, and then eventually Uncle Nate comes.
He gave me a call from Moody after he graduated, and he said, I just want to know what I should do next in life. I'm open to anything. Would you need me down here? And I said, yes, please. So that's when I got somebody to watch my back. Mm-hmm. And that's when we started really making progress and making some progress.
So what was your youth group? Is it its own event, or is it like a Sunday school class?
It was separate. Yeah, we had activities. We'd have trips, and that's where a lot of the scripture songs came from. Mm-hmm. We wanted to teach them the Word. That's the period of time.
Yeah, so that's when you guys are, because right now we have all these psalms and other songs that you're recording.
Yeah.
And we still have them there on Spotify and stuff like that.
Right.
And so that's when you and Uncle Nate made them.
What we did is we limited ourselves that we had to every month we had to come out with one because we'd have a weekend retreat every month.
Every month. Every month you go to Rockhaven.
Rockhaven.
That's crazy.
Except for maybe January or something.
Or December or something like that.
Yeah, so there was a lot of songs during that period of time.
That's crazy. And the kids loved going to Rockhaven. This is old. This is new Rockhaven now.
It was at the new Rockhaven, yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, they didn't. When we first started off, we brought them to camp, and they mutinied on us after the first day because there was rules.
Yeah.
Rules of the length of shorts.
Yeah.
About making out and stuff like that. We said no, we're not going to do that.
Just stuff. Running it.
And so they called a meeting for us to come to. We didn't call a meeting. They called us and says, "Okay, we got an announcement to make to you. We are going home."
That's interesting.
Go there. Usually we make that decision, and we just quick thought and says, "Oh, okay. Well, you won't find your way out of here. It's pretty hard to find your way out of here."
Yeah.
So we talked him into one more night. So just give it a try.
So how many nights are you there when you do a weekend retreat?
Well, this was for camp. We were at an actual camp at this time.
Oh, okay.
Before we started the weekend retreats, basically, we were breaking them into it. And so that one night, the Lord really worked. And this is the night, like Buddy Head, he was really foul. He was a foul guy, and he talked bad about us. But the Lord met him, and then several others.
Yeah, that's interesting. So because that's a lot of time once a month to drive up there.
Oh, it's okay. Here's a thought to consider. I told them not to pay me anything because if I do it, I want to just do it for the Lord. Mm-hmm. They insisted. So in my mind, I'm thinking I really need to do something with the youth,
Yeah.
And so, kind of an obligation. You have to have an activity for them. We go camping and all that stuff, which is terrible. It's work. But so that we set that up, and so it was, we got a work going. You're paying us, and we got a work going. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't near what we're worth. We did a lot more work than we paid
for. And so when did you guys start painting in Arkansas?
Well, Dan, what he did is he came from Alabama, and that's when he came. He was when we were
so Nate comes
there, and then Dan comes,
and then Uncle Dan comes,
and he's got the idea of painting because he comes from Alabama and he worked with a painter. And he brought spraying to the area.
Spray painting, yeah.
To our knowledge, people weren't spraying before that.
Yeah.
So we've sprayed apartments, and we can make a killing because no one did it.
So you guys are all working together?
No, we didn't. I wasn't. Me and Nate are there at the church, but Nate starts working with him because I have a school job.
Oh, okay.
I'm still working at school.
Yeah.
And so they get going, and so then Nate, it was very, very sparse that the first few years. You'd be sitting around the house, no jobs, no money. You couldn't even go out to buy anything. You'd never go. And so it was pretty lean years, And Nate would work with Dan, but then Nate would form a company. I forget it was the Turtle Construction was one, but I don't think he got in on that one. It was a new home design, something new home design. I remember they cut out a figure of a man working, but it was so bad. He would tell Dan at the end of the day, he says, "Boys, I had a good day." He says, I didn't lose any money. And he saw Dan doing pretty good with painting. He said, "Well, I need to get into that." So eventually, that's what he started doing.
Okay, yeah, but he starts his own company.
He starts his own company
because I don't know,
with a guy named Mike Apt.
Yeah. And so
high school buddy.
But Uncle Dan is doing his own thing.
Yeah, and he's actually Uncle Dan started working for another contractor who was a very harsh taskmaster. You pay your minimum wage, and he expected
perfection.
Yeah, perfection.
Yeah,
and more than that.
So when you decide to start painting, you quit school, and start what?
And I'm out. Basically, I am out of the church by then. They kind of coincide. Those 3 years kind of coincide.
Okay, so ending school and ending.
So what I do, Dan says, "Hey, let's just go into we."
Well, and how did that? I mean, if you're having a successful youth group, what was the reasoning like to not have you do that anymore?
We got kicked out. Basically,
Okay.
we started dealing with issues, which to this day we deal with. It's the divorce and remarriage issue. Mm-hmm. It is the excessive drinking, carousing, cursing.
So you were seeing this happen at the church?
Yeah, the leaders of the church were doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys have I mean, what was that like?
We had a
meeting with them, or
they had a meeting with us. Yeah.
Oh.
And I remember that night that we were actually working with the youth, and they pulled us away from the youth. I mean, we're the supervision of the youth.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to you, and so they said we're going to tell you all something. You guys are gone, and they had always accused us of judging people, and so we said, well, interesting. Do you have any charges or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Says we don't have to tell you. We're just going to get rid of you. So we said, well, you're making the worst judgment anybody could make.
Yeah. So they basically fired you.
They said hit the road, which I was so happy. I mean, I couldn't even see straight. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of relieved of your position, and then
Yes.
you guys start FBF, or do you go to another church first?
It's a situation. I've been able to use this also with a girl from Jackson Hole who's going for the same situation now of how it worked for us. But we did not want to start another church. We wanted to find a church that met reasonably during the week, like Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, possibly. We could not find it. We could not find a church that did that. They'd always have these home studies and
Bible studies,
the off
like
and on stuff. The preacher would preach once a week, and so we got a group with us too. A group followed us.
So you guys are wanting 3, and even today FBF has 3 meetings a week. Is that because that's how your grandpa, or that's how Grandpa did it?
To be fair, that is true, except that that midweek service is pretty important. We think.
Yeah.
It could be on a Tuesday or a Thursday, but the culture had accepted Wednesday. And even when you went to Sylvan Hills, there was a respect for Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Not much anymore, but there was a respect, and we went with the culture on that. That would be the most accessible for people to be.
Okay. And that's your dad did a similar thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But his wasn't always on Wednesday.
He always had a Wednesday night.
Okay.
The old days, every church had it.
So you're looking for a church. Obviously, you're still going to church. What is it like? I mean,
it's
you guys just show up as a gang somewhere?
Well, we tried that for just a little bit, but the group basically was just mostly young people, which is a problem because you're looked at as they're looking down on you because you're young. And we're young.
Yeah.
I mean, we're idiots. We're young. We're in 20s, and so they said, "Why don't we meet together in a house?" So, not knowing any better, we just did that. So we did that for weeks, and then they started saying, we need to start a church. Now, we told the people that.
And who's kind of in this group of people?
The Rileys. Rileys were prominent during that
Zach
time.
and Liesel?
Zach.
And
Not Liesel wasn't on the scene yet.
Okay.
We didn't know her.
So Trance and Melba.
Yeah, Trance and Melba. Another guy, the Potters, they're dead now, but he was a police officer. He was a little flaky, and he was part of the Masonic Lodge. That was another thing we'd have to deal with when we started the church. We had to make a stand. So back then it was making a stand, and it was ostracism. When we got kicked out of that church, that was the oldest church in Sylvan Hills. And you go into a store, and you see people pointing at you. Because he'd sent out a nasty note about all the allegations against us, which weren't true, So for several years, we were very despised and rejected by people.
And it's during that time.
During that period of time. And then when we started a church, and we didn't want to start a church. We didn't know how to start a church. What do you do to start a church? For goodness sakes, you're in your 20s, Nate's even younger.
Yeah.
We don't have families. These guys are just off the rocker. Cult, you get all these things.
But you guys had all studied at Moody, and Uncle Dan was...
We could outdo anybody in the area, but
it
didn't matter because you look like a cult. So we thought, really? Start a church? And I think this is very informative for people in the future that come into a situation where there's not a good church, that you can start a church by God's help. And so we started looking, well, what do you got to do to start a church? What do you got to do with the government? What do you got to do? What's your bylaws going to be? How are you going to set up? Because you have to write all that down for a tax exemption and all that. And then you want to post it, what you believe about certain issues. And we still have that church constitution. We still follow it. But we met together and we said, okay, well, we're going to, we get all the good churches we knew and got all their constitutions and weeded out. But one big particular thing is we were always concerned about how the money was spent in the church. First of all, you had salaried people.
Yeah.
And so we decided, no, we're not gonna work for any money. That's gonna be a problem.
What was your inspiration for that? Because obviously your father was basically a
That's
paid
right.
pastor.
That was a big hoop. That's right, because he got his monthly thing, although it wasn't much, but he never depended on it. It was by faith. He always lived by faith.
Uh-huh.
But we took it one step further, and we took it to the point that and see the example of Paul and those in the Bible who worked. He told the Corinthians, he says, "I did accept nothing from you." He said, "You can't deprive me of this boast." And so, the pattern set early was that even though you're higher, you don't do it for money.
Yeah.
You do it, because it comes from you. So we set that up, and then the missions thing, that at least 50% of our income from the offerings, which we don't advertise.
Yeah, at least.
At least, and a lot of times it's like 75%.
Mm-hmm. And how did you guys decide, like, if you're starting a new church, who are you guys sending missions stuff to?
That's very interesting, and that's
that's probably challenging, right?
Very challenging because there's so many people with needs,
Yeah.
So we tried to pick people of like mind. The Turpins were people who we knew at Marcoma. Nate knew them.
So okay. Yeah.
He knew them. Okay.
So that's how that relationship.
Ted was by. There's not such thing as an accident, but Ted had been at Moody with Nate there, and he didn't really know him at the time. But we knew Central American Mission. We knew people who'd come from to our high school, so we checked through them. And just how happened he ran into Ted. And there were some problems from the first because we didn't think we could match doctrinally.
Yeah.
They were really into the free grace thing, and I say that even though we have benefited from them, they have really benefited from us, from that area, and from also child rearing.
Uh-huh.
We were very, very, very solid on that, even though we're just little kids.
Yeah. And so you're obviously now you're painting.
Yeah.
With Uncle Dan.
Yeah.
Right, and he started his own company, and then Uncle Nate has started his own
That's
company.
Right.
You guys are all working. And what would you say the pros and cons are to pastoring your church while working? Do you see? I mean, I think sometimes it's easy to see the benefits, but are there like kind of disadvantages that you have experienced?
Well, the disadvantages would be that you don't spend as much time studying the Word, possibly. Although we think that if you have 3 people doing it, it shares the load, and we believe in the plurality of elders if you can have it.
Yeah.
One guy does it.
Yeah, so a lot of churches just have one person.
That's right.
They study for, whatever,
and then they vote
20 hours. Yeah.
And that's the idea, vote in and say, well, how do you become a pastor if it's not voted in? But the Lord moves on hearts, and I think you start a group, and if people follow, you keep leading. Mm-hmm. If not, you close it up, whatever.
Yeah. So less time studying.
Less time studying. But that said, we have seen, and this is not a boast, but we have seen that our ministry, even under those handicaps, can rival that of those who are getting paid full time.
Yeah.
We spend time with our youth. We spend time sending our money to people and more projects and stuff.
Yeah. So is this when kind of you start FBF camp? When you start?
The problem we had with the other camp, we tried it for a couple times, but they didn't have the same discipline rules.
Yeah. And
they started fearing the government about hitting people. And not that we make it a big deal to hit people, but we want that structure, and so we were able to set it up the way we wanted. We thought about having our own camp. It takes a lot of money. Also, what do you do during the rest of the year with that camp?
Yeah.
So, but we've worked out a deal with them. It's very reasonable. We agree with them doctrinally. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it's carried out. They're a little bit weak on the divorce. People on the board, divorce and stuff.
So what is it like starting a new church, and then you're in charge? You're pretty much growing up. You were usually working with the youth,
right?
You have had a lot of people come through. I mean,
oh yeah, tons of people.
How'd that start out?
Yeah, we've learned a few things, and we were young and we were dumb, and we would welcome open arms everybody, and which is good.
Uh-huh.
But you get a little wisdom after a while. And Paul says, the same entrust to faithful men who are able to teach others.
Yeah.
We've learned a little bit more wisdom on that. We didn't have the work detail down. that we believe that that's a big factor. A person that they're not lazy, and
Yeah.
we produced a lot of people early that were lazy. We
Uh-huh.
let them by with it just so they knew the doctrine,
Yeah.
and we think that was a failure.
Yeah. So now, kind of a little bit later on, you're getting more involved with nieces and nephews, right?
Right.
And I would say you guys have been a pretty big influence on all of our lives, and probably most through teaching music.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the decision? When did you decide to do that? Because that's a pretty big time commitment.
It is.
You're basically
Yeah.
here from what 3 to 9 every Monday and Tuesday, right?
That's right. Yeah, for a 12-week period, two 12-week periods.
And how did that start?
It's really amazing how it starts. This is very, very interesting for people who want to do it. There's a little girl in Mexico, in fact, who's taken that pattern and she's going with it and really doing some great things. But it's based off that model. I have not learned all those instruments. I'm interested in them,
Yeah.
and I enough to study them and start on them. But my goal is to get other people playing them. I'm not one. It's not a one-man show.
Yeah.
But it's even before that. What is in your hand? God said to Moses, "What is in your hand?" I thought, well, how can I be most effective? I went from a hermit. The Lord changed my heart, and I said, the Bible has no stories on hermits.
Yeah.
Or people who go in caves and start studying theology. And that's what pastors do a lot of times.
Uh-huh.
They go in their little cave and they study.
Yeah.
And you'd ask the question a while ago, is there a difference? There's a big difference, because when we preach, we don't preach really, really long messages. Not that I'm against them, but
Yeah.
we're the working man. That guy's got to get up the next morning.
Yeah.
He's got to work.
Yeah.
So we identify with him on that. And so, but I wanted to be useful anyway, and even in the little hiking experiences that you've been on. Why do you do something like
Yeah,
that?
I have questions
Well,
about that too.
It's just something that you might be able to use. You're not a professional at it. You've never done it before, but you're going to use it. And so the same thing as music. I didn't know a lot how to do it, but we just did it, and things evolve. People question you, like they don't want to be involved in it, and so it's really rough at the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's your, it's such a long, so much time. How do you stay kind of disciplined in that? Like, what's your mentality like? Because it's not always fun, I assume. I mean, because I remember I was not a good student.
Well, you turned out at the end, though. That's good.
Yeah, but I wasn't, it's got to be frustrating.
Yeah. Well,
So how do you deal with like kids who
fortunately-
aren't responding?
Unfortunately, a lot of people had good moms, and they would make their kids practice. So that's a game changer. That's really not fair
Yeah.
to evaluate a teacher on that, because really it's the parents who are doing the job. But then you get the people who don't have that incentive. And so what really motivates me is if I can spend time with every kid that goes through the church, that can be written about in books,
Yeah.
because that is not normal. And so the Lord is graciously giving me that opportunity, and I take it seriously. And just this last movement, somebody who's not in the church just give me a hug. I mean, they don't hug anybody. They don't talk to anybody. Just, man, I really appreciate your help in that area.
Yeah. So, and then the piece that's probably important is the recital.
You have to have a reward system. You have to have a punitive system.
Punishment.
That's right. If they don't do it, they're going to be,
So, and obviously you're still involved with a lot of our lives, but what are your other favorite ways to kind of like influence us? What do you find like good methods?
Unfortunately, this treasure hunt thing, I never intended it to go more than one time. And treasure hunts have always intrigued me. And I think the Lord uses our bent to do certain things.
So was the first time you ever did a New Year's Eve treasure hunt at FBF?
I believe it was here, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd never done that anywhere else?
No.
You did kind of like your own idea?
Right. I'd read about them. I think, well, that's amazing. But there's no help. There's really no help for a good treasure hunt. You just have to think it off the top of your head.
You have to make it up. And so what do you recommend to like, because now a lot of the people like me who you influence are in your position.
Yeah.
We have nieces and nephews of our own. What are your like recommendations for having a positive influence on our nieces and nephews? Like, how do you what would you say?
You learn to get over yourself, and you love it. It's very important. The Bible uses the terms brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start treating people as if they're your brothers and sisters. And that's how you say, what does love look like? Well, how do you love, pretending that you have a good family?
Yeah.
But how do you love your brother and sister? Okay, that's how I need to love everybody. And so that you take an interest in them, anything they're doing because they're your brother and sister.
So that's, you would say
That's been a gauge.
That's where it starts, is
It's been a gauge area.
interested in what they're interested in.
You get interested in. That's
Okay.
right. That's the main thing.
And then you kind of learn about them, and then
That's right. And actually becomes, it's kind of fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of brings us to where you are currently, in a way. So now I have random questions,
Okay.
kind of that I had written down that I want to know about, and probably the first one. This is actually from Joe Waller. We talked to him a little bit about it, but he was asking when you first felt like a man, like grown up and responsible. What was that first? When did that first happen?
I think when I was serious about being responsible for consequences,
And what did that look like?
it's just I need to. I just need to be careful how I conduct myself around people because it has an influence on them. That's the most important thing to people. What you come across as. Now you can't always come across good, but you need to be responsible. You can't just do things for fun.
Yeah. Do you remember like a moment where you?
But just little moments like you're racing through a neighborhood, kids. What does that look like to people?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's a. And I try to share the gospel after that. No, you're irresponsible. You're young. And
So that was in college when you started thinking like this?
no,
or?
it's just even up in my 20s. Even when you're head of the church here, you think I need to be responsible because people watch me, and you don't do it to be fake. You do it because you care for people.
Yeah, because you lose
Yeah.
basically relationship capital
Right.
value.
As
if
far as it's
you're-
possible, live at peace with all men.
Mhm.
You can, if you can.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, because a lot of times mentally I still feel like a little
Yeah.
child.
But the thing is, I don't want to take away from the idea of things that are done right on the spot, spontaneous. I think it's wonderful to show youth, and that's why I like working with youth. Is their spontaneity? There's the irresponsibility too.
Yeah.
And I want to show both. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like if we're hiking, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, but I need to know the consequences of that.
Yeah.
You're going to have wet clothes, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just do this for fun.
Yeah.
And to be young at heart. That's right.
So something that brings us to kind of the next thing. Hiking trips are, I think you've done several of them. And what was the first? When did you think that was a good idea? I know it's kind of changed, had a big
Right.
impact on my way, I think, and act. But when
Yeah.
did you?
At first, it came a desperation of my part when I was up at Trace Ridge, and there was a group of guys there I could never win anyway. They never came to church or anything, and so it's a small community, and I just kind of get buddy in with them. But I thought the best way to do it is I just go on a hike. I had no idea, and
Yeah.
fortunately, I had Nate with me on one of those, and we had known nothing about hiking. We had Army backpacks that are terrible.
So
That don't conform to your
the
body.
first hike you did was a long time ago.
A long time
way
ago.
before us.
And that's before they had trails.
Mhm.
We'd follow riverbeds, the Buffalo River trails.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you get a bunch of kids together, and you just
Yeah, a bunch, bunch of never.
Yeah,
Sure, maybe
maybe
5, 6,
yeah.
But
And how many days are you hiking with them?
Probably several, but we wouldn't be ready for the elements or anything like that. It's
Uh-huh.
stupid. And I could see somebody looking at that and say, "You're really stupid."
Yeah.
You're dumb. And we were dumb. But that's an amazing thing about that age. You can make stupid decisions, but the Lord can work them out.
Yeah.
And a lot of energy. I had tons of energy at that age.
Mhm.
Yeah. When I got 27, I remember one day waking up and I thought, it's different. But up to that point, I had a lot of energy. I didn't have to go to sleep or anything.
Yeah.
Then it changed.
So basically, you're kind of getting them out of their element.
Right, and sharing the gospel with them.
Mhm.
And they'd have tobacco. They weren't supposed to bring tobacco.
Yeah.
But tobacco. I remember one guy, he was just hurting. He was ready to die. He said, this person, he said, I'm so sorry. He said, I know I'm not supposed to bring tobacco, but I did. He said, but I'm telling you, if you let me take it right now, I promise you I'll be a lot better. Anyway, I'll let him take it. Yeah, go ahead. Let him know it's not a matter of the law or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, you're doing these early, and then the later ones. What benefit do you see in those with?
I read in a book called The Seven Pillars of Wisdom by Lawrence E. Taylor, I think his name is. And he was in a world war, and he was with the Arabs. They're fighting and doing bushwhacking and stuff. And but something stuck out to me. I know this is very stupid, but he would state how they would cover 50 miles a day.
Yeah.
Camels in the desert, and they wouldn't drink water. And then they finally get to an oasis with a dead camel in it, and they peel away the thing and drink.
Yeah.
And then I remember all the stories of war, and I never understood that. They'd march all night, and I'm thinking, what is that like? It's
50
amazing.
miles is pretty far.
50 miles is very far.
Yeah.
But they had a camel, and I kind of take it. Did they walk with the camel? They probably did, but some of them rode on the camel. So, and he was known for a little exaggeration. But I thought, surely that would be a good life lesson. Because guys are sissies now. They are so sissy. And, they don't want to get dirty. And I'm thinking, that's terrible. They don't want to get dirty. I mean, So we started off, and it was rough at the beginning. And I remember when Nate and us older guys did it a little bit. Not anything like we do now, but we just followed the river trail. And we had a rule that nobody could help anybody, which sounds terrible. It sounds unchristian and all that. But it was a great thing that it made you responsible. Then we'd have people who fell into sin, and they'd share each other's tent. I mean, it's fun things.
Yeah.
The dumb things you do in the youth, okay?
Making fun of them for helping each other out.
But the thing is those are the stories we remember.
Yeah.
And I believe, seriously, some of those will have a part of heaven. I mean, I know it. We would have devotions. We would, share. And we do it a little bit different now, but there's something about that magic age that you're in. That you use your energy, buddy. You can do stupid things and get away with it,
Yeah, so we had a lot of hiking trips. I remember mine was pretty fun. Not very fun.
Not fun, yeah.
Was there like a worst? Which one do you remember as being the worst?
There were two of them that were bad. One of them I was not on. I was only partially on it. That's when your brother Elijah went, and he claims that it rained all the time, and they were ill-equipped to do that. And so, midweek, after the service, because I went to church, as I go and join him, your dad brings me down there, and your brother Elijah, he'll deny this, but he claimed that his foot was broken or something, and he couldn't go on. I knew what he was doing. He was eat up with rot.
Yeah.
His body was rotting. He's one of the toughest hikers there is.
He's also prone to exaggeration sometimes.
So that was one trip. Another one was I don't know if you were there when Little Phil was the whole group. There's 10 of us.
Yeah.
10 of us. Some of the missionary
That was
kids.
one before me.
And it was so bad that people after that first day you were allowed to turn back and go home. And then I threatened them with, this isn't spiritual, but it's just funny. It's fun. I said, what will the girls say?
Yep.
And they said, we don't care what the girls say. Well, I know they would have. But anyway, we talked them into it. It's a fun part of the story. It's a real story where Josh got the vision, and he says, hey, guys, I think we can do this. This is the hardest day.
He just said that it was a
hardest day. But anyway, at the end of the trip, some of those guys were some of the strongest guys. And we heard later from one of them, he got a job up there in Oregon as somebody washing dishes. They got pretty good money up there because of rich people, but he was just sweating away, and he thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to faint. Then he thought back to that hike.
Yeah.
He says, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to hiking. He went on to get a promotion in the job, make a lot of money, and he finally went on to get married, engineer, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I would hope that just a little bit of that changes mentality, being a missionary kid, kind of sheltered, to get a hardened thought. And so I've tried to make it my goal. It evolved in this, that everybody in the family, nephew, nieces, do it.
Yeah.
And the last one we did. So hopefully I'll not have to do it again.
Well, some other people maybe take it on for the next generation. So another kind of random question I have is, you're obviously musically gifted. Was there ever a time where you considered pursuing a career playing music?
What I hated about musicians, and I learned this early, is that I realized my, what should you say, my motives for doing it. I was back during your years, a little earlier too, and I would do these concerts on the weekend. I did them quite regularly, a lot of concerts, different camps and stuff. But I realized my motive was all bad. If during that time is what girl is watching, and I'd be singing spiritual songs. I'd see that little girl in the audience, and I'd think, ooh, I wonder if I can talk to her afterward. And I was shy, but it's just that it was in my mind. I wanted to impress her or whatever, and then all of a sudden I talked to her. And these are motives that happen to all college students.
Yeah.
Bar none. I mean, and when we go on a missions trip, I know that's in their mind, and I tell them that.
Yeah.
So, and it's not bad. I said it's normal, whatever, but just control it. And so I had that idea of, and also how different cadences that you play affect people's emotions. I've had people come up after a service and say, "Boy, the Holy Spirit was really in that song," but I know what it was. It was the 1-6-4 chord. Whatever I use it, just a certain time, and I knew how to use it. And so that shouldn't disqualify it, but I was aware that music a lot of times is emotional, which is okay, so it's used right, but also it involved money. You did it for money. I mean, every musician, buy this song or whatever, Back then it was CDs, and they're pushing them because if they're making money.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want to get into that. So I'm going to just go under the radar. I'm not serious about spending a life doing music. I want to use it, and I enjoy good musicians, but I don't want to devote my.
Yeah, so that kind of bother you, like making a profit off of singing Christian songs, basically, or like.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I did these scripture songs in IV. It was disallowed if you do over so many verses. You have to get special permission for that.
From the NIV.
I think it crying out loud.
Yeah.
This is the Bible, and then I'd see that they guard their copyrights and stuff. It's a job. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do music as a job.
Because you felt like it took away from.
Yeah, take away the ministry part. Because I'm more interested in the soul of that person. I'm not interested in the job.
Yeah. So another thing I'm kind of interested in is like creative process. How do you write a song, and what is your like kind of maybe philosophy? That's a bad word. I really nailed that one. Of writing, I don't know. What's your mentality? Do you kind of, some people believe like, oh, you sit down and then like it just comes to you, like, well, worldly people would say idea of the muse, basically. Like,
right.
How does that?
I don't limit myself to anything, but I'll say like with the Psalms, when I was in college, a lot of those Psalms are done in college, even before I got to the youth group.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice the youth group ones were all New Testament because we wanted the gospel to come out.
Yeah.
But those, I'd read a psalm and I go, man, that is exactly how I'm feeling. That's exactly what I wanted. And then the song would come to me.
Okay.
And I love doing it. It wasn't a job, and I didn't do it for anybody but myself.
So do you have like a book that you would write down the music in, or you just come to
no,
and
never
remember it?
No.
Remember each one of these by memory.
Yeah.
And then what about ones that aren't? Because you also have songs that you wrote that aren't scripture.
Scripture.
Yeah.
The first one was Back in the Country, and I really felt every bit of that because I wanted to go home. Home, home, home. Back in the country, where I was born.
Uh-huh.
It just really, and I know it's very secular, but it was my first one.
Yeah.
And I just remember the good times that we had, taking my licks, getting ripped by mom and dad, but it's great. It all turned out good.
Yeah.
So just a good feeling song, but also experiential songs. And sometimes it's a funeral comes, and somebody asks me to write one, and I'm right there. My emotions are just, I try to turn it to the gospel.
Uh-huh.
Use those emotions to turn it to the gospel. But it's no magic.
Yeah. Do you? Was it ever like kind of like a coping mechanism? Like you experience something and you write a song about it, and then like.
Yeah.
Okay.
The psalm, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?
Yeah.
How long will you hide your face from me? Like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I wasn't going through any trouble at all, but to me it was trouble.
Yeah.
And that's just like out of my mouth. That's out of my heart. I can sing that, Or Psalm 51, have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love.
Yeah.
That's after I sinned. I'm thinking, man, I just need to sing that,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Let's see. So, kind of coming to the end of my questions. One question I have is, how would you define discipline? I think, I mean, your life is pretty busy, and you've managed to stay consistent and disciplined in that.
My life really isn't that busy. It could be a lot busier, but when you get older, you get tired.
Mm-hmm.
So your motivation has to come from within. It has to come from the Lord. And so I judge something as important, and hopefully I'm obedient, and I do it. In those days, I didn't have to have God's help.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that, not how it sounds.
Yeah, but you have more energy to do it.
Oh, yeah, I could spend up all night and just do something frivolous. It didn't work out. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Had fun doing it. But
Yeah.
now I kind of pick and choose. Is it worth the effort? You know.
So how do you keep going when it feels routine? What is
the soul of man? The soul.
Mhm.
When I think of the soul,
the value?
yeah, the value of soul. Yeah, fortunately, I've lived long enough to see souls that weren't going to make it, and then they made it. I'm thinking, man, I can't give up on that guy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets hard sometimes. There's people I prayed for years, but that's another thing. That is a huge thing that I've learned in the last 20 years. I'm learning is if you don't pray about it, it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
It's not worth doing. That's where the power's at.
Mm-hmm. Praying.
Pray. And so when I run to that person I'm praying for, and they're going through a problem, I don't fret so much anymore. I'm thinking, I've already prayed about that.
Mm-hmm.
So Lord, just give me wisdom how you want to use me in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That makes a lot of sense.
But it's so much better to live that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are certain people I pray for every day. And if I wake up at night, look at that list, my mind.
Yeah.
And another thing, do you write it down or do you have in your mind? It says pray without ceasing.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me that you don't go around with this list all day long. Now, I'm not against lists, and I have a list at home.
Yeah.
And I vacillate back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to get to the point where I could remember them, and I just pray. And like I'll tell people, there's certain people that they're saying, I don't think you really care about my situation. I said, tell me something. Do you know somebody who prays for you every day? I said, I pray for you every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love you.
Yeah.
And so it gives me assurance. Not that my prayer is just big time in heaven, but it's part of the incense.
Yeah.
The bowl of incense in Revelation.
And so, what would you say some of your most a good kind of success story? Obviously, you prayed about something. It's obviously God working, right?
Yeah.
But God answering your prayers.
Right.
What would be a good, probably your prime example of that?
I would say of a lot of the kids in the church that turn out, and I know it's not just my prayer,
Mm-hmm.
but it's amazing. Caleb, Solomon, Blake,
Mm-hmm.
these late guys.
Yeah.
I think the Lord is really teaching us prayer, and these were not givens. None of these were givens.
Yeah.
Even Solomon's life is on the rocks there in California, and you just pray about it, and then you spend time with them because you have a reason, because you're invested in them, and you give them whatever money is needed, whatever time is needed. Like I was with Solomon last night, trying to deal with the pipes that were frozen at Nate's house, and he brought me out to dinner.
Yeah.
We just had a great time,
Uh-huh.
But that's something unplanned.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, what would you say? A lot of younger people now. What advice would you give, just as far as a framework of thinking that you think where a lot of us are missing out on? Maybe.
I think the idea
Mindset.
is that, and I think this came up at the family reunion, this Thanksgiving, is we think that God is most concerned about where we end up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get this degree and do this. And I think it's good to apply for a degree, by the way. I think you can be useful to the Lord. He is most concerned about the process.
Yeah.
If you get to that thing that he wanted you to, and you didn't do the process, you're hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Because your life is not going to be meaningful. But during that process, if you do it right, you trust him, and it's harder. Like I told, who did I tell the other night? I told Caleb, he's getting married this year.
Yeah.
His fault. I mean, he called it early. Yeah, he's got to get it. No, which is good. It's probably God's will. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a consequence to that. All of a sudden, you got pressure on you.
Yeah.
No house.
Mm-hmm.
No money for a house.
Yeah.
What do you do for a job? I mean, he's working for Ablar, but he's thinking he's got to make all these decisions at once. And so he's faced with that house that he has to come up with so much money. We can't do it. unless he has someone co-sign for him.
Yeah.
And he's got a daddy that probably could. And he's got a future father-in-law that probably could. Mm-hmm. I told him, I said, Caleb, don't you dare bring that up to them.
Yeah.
You don't bring it up to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where young people miss it. They go on through life. I said, you could call either one of them up tonight.
Yeah. And
you could get a co-signer. And you could get in the house. It'd be so much easier for you. I said, but don't do that. You trust God. Mm-hmm. And he's done that. And he's one of the rare ones. He takes advice, and he'll become a great man of faith.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah, so a lot of your kind of the warning or lesson is there's sometimes an easy path.
Yeah. Don't take the easy path.
To get to it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the harder path is more.
That's the process. The Lord wants to teach you faith. He said, Lord, and we pray, Lord, teach me faith. Mm-hmm. But we're not willing to take that journey.
Yeah.
Paul says, I didn't ask you, Corinthians, for anything.
Mm-hmm.
I could have, and you would have given it to me. But I don't want you to deprive me of that post.
So one of my favorite guys who interviews people, he always ends his interviews with a question. He always asks, "What do you believe love is?" It's funny. He's an engineer, robotic. He's like basically totally robot guy.
Yeah, right.
Russian,
right.
Hilarious. But so I figured that'd be a good way to end. Is like
define that word love there.
So love. Well, I mean, I think it's. When you think of the word love, what do you? Yeah, there's obviously different Greek.
Yeah.
Greek.
What level are you looking at there?
Well, I think which one? Obviously, a lot of people in America think romance love, but I think the deeper meaning is like brotherly love or agape love, right? So which one do you think is most important or prime, and what would you? Yeah.
As I stated earlier, the way that I get to agape love, because I have no idea how to do that. Because when I'm hungry, I eat.
Yeah.
When I'm tired, I sleep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't know what is that. I don't do those things. And I think basically it goes back to that brotherly love. Treat people as brothers and sisters. And Philippians 2, consider others better than yourselves. Now, I'm not a good example of that, but that's my standard.
Yeah.
Consider, I want them to get it first, and I'll second.
So if you want,
agape.
Yeah, to learn, if you feel like you need to learn love, that's a good place to start.
You treat them like a brother or sister. Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly a good brother or sister.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that kind of ends up with most of my questions. I guess one last one: is there any? Would you say that looking back throughout the whole scope, is there anything you regret or wish you would have improved on that maybe we can learn lessons from?
There have been times in life that and still happens, that I am not faithful to introduce the gospel to people.
Yeah.
And I get into a good relationship with them, but I fail the big thing. And that is, now I'm not necessarily advocating that every situation you go into, you just broadside them with the gospel, because maybe my job is to plant.
Yeah.
Maybe it's to plant with a good life and just give them a glimpse of Christ and let somebody fill it up, rather than beating them on the head and then they're against it forever,
Yeah.
If that's possible. I think that is possible. And so, but that's my regret, that I would be lax and just leaving that to someone else to really, I'm careful when I go to a store to be real nice to people and to thank them for any goodness and kindness they show me, with the hope that somebody will come along, and they'll connect that with the gospel. But I think I lack wisdom in that.
Yeah.
Of really, on planes, obviously you have to hit it when you're on an airplane,
Yeah.
but. In the community that you're going to live with them, maybe the next 15 years, what is your approach? And I don't have a lot of wisdom on that. I respect people who do it both ways.
Yeah.
I'm careful not to go.
Well, it's kind of you don't want to, gotcha. Like, oh, I'm a nice person. Then, oh, gotcha.
Yeah, that's right.
Just,
you're treating them like a number.
Yeah.
And I've seen people on street evangelism, and I'm not going against them because they're doing something.
Yeah.
But they will have run into me earlier, okay?
Uh-huh.
Then I go up and say, okay, let me. I said, you already did.
Yeah.
100%. In other words, I wasn't a soul to them.
Yeah.
Apparently. So I would want to make sure don't do that, but I don't want to make the other mistake too.
Of not.
Yeah, that's right.
Like being an ambassador, and they, God asks you, like, well, did you ever talk to them about what I sent you to talk to them? It's like, oh no, it didn't come up.
Yeah, it did come up. I was getting around to it. But I didn't
yeah. This is your one job,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really weak in that area. So I do try to love people. I've started telling people that I love them. Dad would not do that.
Yeah.
And he may have been wiser. He had until he got older. He wouldn't say I love you. At the very last, he'd say I love you, particularly to the girls. I love you.
Yeah.
But that really bothered me. I thought, well, what would the Apostle Paul do?
Yeah.
He says, I love you with the affection of Christ. I'm thinking, I'm free to say that.
Yeah.
If I really love him, I'm free to say that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, are there? So hopefully, I can do this with your other siblings. Are there any things about other siblings that you'd like to learn about, or like, I don't know.
I think every sibling I could learn something from.
Yeah.
Yeah. John was very benevolent with us guys. Mm-hmm. He was the one who forged the path. Steve encouraged me by taking a risk, letting me work with his youth group.
Yeah.
I never knew how to do that. He said, you can do it. And he encouraged me to do that. Joel, obviously, in many areas, he encourages me, like after I speak, or he encourages me if he finds something at the auction he thinks would be of encouragement to me, or just all kinds of thoughts of thinking a different way about it. So he's encouraged me to think deeper. He's probably one of the main reasons why I took what I learned from Moody, and he'd question it. He'd say, "What?" Yeah. And so Ruth, of course, I remember her as a little girl. I didn't have any crayons for school. Everybody had crayons. So she made a point with the bus coming to give me crayons. And so she's always been that way. Little brother.
It's hard to believe.
Dan, he has been his diligence. He's taught me diligence. And just you force through. You don't be a coward. Don't cower away from people. You stand up strong. Lydia she's got great kindness. Just very kind to me. She'll just write me and encourage me, and she cares. She has sympathy.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Of course, Nate is just the undying energy. Optimism.
Yeah.
He'll in the face of just all kinds of odds. He'll prove it with his life. You go to bed, and he'll stay up all night.
Yeah.
He'll work on it. So.
Yeah.
And many other things for them. So blessed to have people that I consider myself unworthy among them. So I can just do what I can do. I don't have the brain they have, generally the skills they have, but I can do what I'm supposed to do. And what is really interesting, you asked about mechanics earlier.
Yeah.
I didn't know how I was going to learn it, but after owning a few cars, like the aforementioned cars,
yeah.
I woke up to the fact that I know how to work on a car.
Uh-huh.
And I tried to figure out how it happened. Okay, it was that time in Alabama that a screw came out of the carburetor, and a gentleman stopped, and we figured it out, and I had to go to the parts store and explain it. And everything was all ears. Mm-hmm. When you get a situation like that, you're stuck on the road hundreds of miles from home. You listen to everything. You learn. Well, anyway, that's graduated to today, and I make a joke out of it, but it's true, that the Lord, for some reason, it seems, this is true, that He, on my vehicles or on mechanical things, He causes them to not work in all these specific areas that I am to help people in the future.
Yeah.
So therefore, that people give me the wrong reputation. They say, you're a genius. No. He brought me through that. And I would not know that unless He had brought me through that. So this week, 2 days ago, there's 2 or 3 calls. I'm going over Gavies. I'm going over. Blake's got a funny thing on it. And Solomon's got a problem on the axles and stuff. And they call me up, and I'm thinking, I'm the last guy you should call up.
Yeah.
Jeremiah calls me up about this motor he's taking apart. For crying out loud. And so I got all these calls, and listen to this sound. I'm thinking, I think I'm a genius. I'm not a genius. I don't know anything.
Well, yeah, but you always act like you know what to do.
But the thing is, if I do know what to do, it's happened to me before.
Yeah, it's happened to you
that's
before.
Right. And so it's not genius. I'm dumb.
Yeah.
But the Lord does that. So I guess I don't know why He does it.
Yeah.
Maybe to elevate me in the eyes of people that I'm not supposed to be. It's
Yeah.
just I'm dumb.
Yeah, well, it just goes to show, like, a bad thing that happens to you can be used for good. Used for good, you know.
Were you on that trip when the axle came off the trailer in the
I
hills?
don't think so, yeah.
Okay. Has that ever happened to you?
No.
And what do you do? Yeah.
I don't
You
know.
got to get it home. It's 2 hours away from here.
Yeah.
I think, God, you can pick all kinds of things to happen.
Yeah.
Why would you? Well, He did it for a reason. And I've had to deal with that since.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I can help people, you know. So.
Well, that's all I have.
We're good.
I don't know.
I've probably said too much.
No.
But I
great.
want you to think less of me than you do. Because the idea is it's all Christ. He's merciful. You know, he raises up, he places down. You know. And all I wanted to be was somebody who's just not in the limelight or anything, just doing my job, just trying to do it. And I think it's amazing what the Lord can do through you. And you're not even responsible for it, but you're just obedient, and He can elevate you. He can, and you're not doing it for that either. He can make something so mundane into something important.
Yeah.
Like these lessons I have, that's mundane. Come on, man. I'm dealing with little kids with no minds, you know. But He can take something like that. He can. I remember your brother David when he was at that youth group there, in that Chase County church, or whatever. Years, you know, we'd do lessons, you know. And I tried to teach him bars. He wasn't really interested. So he calls up and says, "Did you tell me again about those bars?" You know, anybody else in the world could have told him.
Yeah.
Okay, better than I could have. Mm-hmm. But that was a connection.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's where we'll finish.
Okay.
Thank you, Uncle Phil.
Thank you.
Oh man.